What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mick Thinks Tiny. My name is Mick. So we've been talking a lot about states in New England. There's a state near New England that's worth talking about in terms of going tiny that might be a good option for some of you. So today I'm going to talk about Pennsylvania. So I'm going to talk about tiny house communities in Pennsylvania. This is a great video for those of you who are looking to go tiny. Maybe you already live in PA and you're not as aware of the options available to you, or Pennsylvania is a better option for you compared to some of the other places that you could move to that might be farther away. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and let's jump into it. Let's talk about tiny house communities in Pennsylvania. All right, welcome back to the channel. So there's a couple reasons why I think Pennsylvania is worth talking about. In general, I'm going to cover all 50 states, so it's, next on the list. But specific to Pennsylvania, there's some advantages to this particular region. There's some things going on in terms of tiny homes, and it might be a good fit for those of you who have reached out about different areas that are close to New England or in the northeastern part of the United States. I actually lived in Pennsylvania for about 5 years, so I'm pretty familiar with the sort of like Philly metro area. So there's a lot of really cool things you can do in Philadelphia. There's a lot of pros to living in the state. So we're going to talk about some of those benefits. So cost of living is actually one of them. So Pennsylvania is actually less expensive than some of the other states you could choose in the United States. So the United States median family income is about 80K. In PA, you're looking at about 76. And there's plenty of towns in Pennsylvania that are well under that $76,000 a year, especially if you go further outside of the city of Philadelphia. Now, it is in the mid-Atlantic region, so like I'm saying, it's adjacent to New England, but it's not technically in New England because it's next to Ohio, so it's a little closer to the Midwest. But you are close to states like Ohio, Michigan, New York, Massachusetts. And then you have Philadelphia, which has multiple universities. There's different ways you can go to New York. You can go down to, Baltimore. There's Hershey Park, so there are some like attractions. And then ultimately there's like the history and the museums as well too. There's quite a few museums in Philadelphia in particular. So it's worth living in that regard as well. Tiny house laws don't differ too much. Across the United States, you're going to look at a lot of differences from county to county. So in general, I'm always going to say to make sure you check out different counties. So I looked at Chester County. In Chester County, they call them mini homes. They have to be 500 square feet or less. They can be placed on the same land as a single family home. That's kind of the biggest plus. Anywhere that you look, if you can put a tiny house in the same spot that's zoned as residential for a single family home, you're going to be in a good position. They do allow tiny houses on wheels, but they emphasize RIVA certification, so RVIA, which is easier for getting financing anyway. So that's just something to look into depending on the area of Pennsylvania you want to be in. When we're talking about tiny house communities, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. First and foremost is the affordability piece of it. Best case scenario, you're going to be saving a lot of money. Maybe you'll save a little bit, but you're definitely going to be saving more than you would for going the single family home route if you're going to buy it outright. There's amenities as well too. They continue to try to grow and expand and be more resort-like. The locations hopefully continue to improve. I know a lot of you want to be closer to major cities and airports, and there's not a ton of communities that are offered in this country right now, but hopefully more will continue to be built. There's security as well. A lot of them are trying to become more secure in terms of gated communities and things like that. And then ultimately it offers you that flexibility because you don't have to stay long term. You're signing a 1-year lease. After that year, you can make a decision about whether or not you want to stay tiny in that area, in that particular community. You want to go and build your own tiny house. Maybe you've saved up enough money to buy land. So there's a lot of opportunities for just being able to sort of like choose what your life looks like in this particular community. So when we're looking at Pennsylvania, I know the more recent video I did on Massachusetts, I talked about Massachusetts being a campground state, but when I looked at Pennsylvania, I stand corrected. Pennsylvania is actually more of a campground RV state than Massachusetts. So these are all of the campgrounds in PA, just the ones that I've, that highlighted that pop up when you do a Google Maps search. There's even more than this, but just so you can see, there are campgrounds pretty much everywhere between Pennsylvania and between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. What that means is that there are a lot of more there's opportunities for people who want to do more transient lifestyles, who want to do daily rentals or monthly rentals. There are a couple of RV parks that allow tiny homes, and there is a tiny house community in Pennsylvania, so we're going to cover that in today's video. So when we're looking at the tiny house sort of like climate, there are builders there. So I was able to find one called Tiny Lux Home. They build more cottage style. So like from like an aesthetic perspective, you have to be interested in something that looks more like kind of cottagey or log cabiny. So, but you can reach out to them and see what their different models look like, and maybe you might find something that you like. And then if you remember from wow, if you remember from like a really long time back now, one of the first people I had on the channel is the owner of Tiny House of Happiness. So this is a tiny house that's in Philadelphia, in city limits, and just offers an opportunity for you to sort of like slow down, disconnect, but still be connected to nature, and you're not too far away from the city. So Tiny House of Happiness is worth checking out. So you can make sure you check them out if you want to go on like a little trip and try out something different. So when we're talking about tiny house communities, there's one formal tiny house community in Pennsylvania, so I figured it's worth mentioning. I've had them on the channel multiple times. It's Tiny Estates. This is what their website looks like. So if you remember, Tiny Estates has about 50 or so slots available. They're about 25 minutes from a Walmart. They're in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. It's an established community. They've been around since, I believe, 2017 or 2018. You can bring your own tiny home, which is a plus, because I know a lot of you are sort of becoming sort of like frustrated, or you're concerned about the fact that a lot of newer tiny house communities make you buy the home from them. So in this community, you can just bring your own tiny house. There are some restrictions, and so, but yeah, you have to do that. So it's $750 a month, which includes like water, sewer, trash, maintenance, that sort of thing. There's long-term rentals as well too. So there's nightly, and then there's long-term. So the PA location does have long-term rentals. I'll talk about those in a second. And they're currently full, but they're expanding. So if you remember from the video I did about a month and a half or so back, they were expanding their location in PA. So that's something to take into consideration. And always make sure you reach out to people who currently live in the community to get the best sense for what the community is like too, especially since there have been people that have been on the channel that live there, so you can reach out to them and ask questions. But Tiny Estates is an option for you. This is what their long-term rentals look like. So right now in their Elizabethtown location, they've got a tiny home called the Harbor and the Mountain. So these are available for you to rent right now. In monthly rates range from $1,100 a month to $1,300 a month, and it includes utilities. So this might be worth checking out for those of you who are, maybe your tiny home is being built and you want to live in a community and try it out before your tiny home is finished, or you're just not sure at all about tiny house life and you're like kind of want to dip your toe in the water a little bit. This could be a good option for you if you're in that Northeast region. Next up is Twin Grove RV Resort and Cottages. So this is one of the few RV resorts / parks that I found that has more like cabin, tiny house like options. So this is what their website looks like. So Twin Grove RV Resort and Cottages is in Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. It's about 30 minutes from a Walmart. They've got RV sites, and they also have cottage rentals. So the cottage rentals are daily, but they also have monthly ones. And the reason why I want to bring this particular resort up is because these cottages are a little more reasonable. So you can rent them at $550 to $785 a month, which is much more affordable than some other places where it costs like thousands of dollars a month. And this is what one of the cottages look like. They have a fitness center, they've got a pool, they're by a lake, and they're pet friendly, so they might be worth checking out. All right, the other option that I thought would be worth looking into is the land buying option, just because Pennsylvania is more affordable than some of the other places I've mentioned. If you remember from the previous video in Massachusetts, you could spend well over $1 million to get a couple of acres of land by the water. In Pennsylvania, you'll spend a lot less. So one of the options I found was $100 grand for 18 acres. Now, this is recreational and farmland, which means you could end up putting a tiny house community on it if you wanted. So this is an opportunity for like entrepreneurship, to build out a community and also be able to live there yourself. So, and it's a pretty reasonable price. The other option I found was actually a little under $20,000 for close to 3/4 of an acre. So this is within an existing community where you can actually just buy the land and it's already set up. I don't know what it looks like in terms of sewer and all those different utilities and the full development of it, but at $20,000 you're getting a pretty good amount of land in a pretty solid location. They're not too far from not too far from like amenities or necessities and things like that. So when we're looking at this particular video, thinking about what options best for you, there's a couple of options. You can do the standard community route and check out tiny estates, or you can check out an RV park and you can rent a home, or you can buy land and DIY it. Now, I feel like the buying land DIY route is probably the most affordable of some of the videos I've done in terms of location, in terms of the price. So it might be worth checking out all of these options just to make sure you get the most for your money. But ultimately, based on this video and the research that I have done, there are 3 options for you to go tiny. In a more formal sense, in Pennsylvania, you could either check out Tiny Estates, you could look at Twin Groves RV Park, or you could go the land DIY route. But ultimately, it's up to you. So I want to know what you think. For those of you who are living in Pennsylvania, have you looked at Tiny Estates? What are your thoughts on going tiny? I know that Pennsylvania feels a little more promising than Massachusetts because there is no formal tiny house community in Massachusetts right now. But I want to know what you guys think. I want to know where you're at in the process. Drop a comment. I love hearing from you guys. If you haven't seen my most recent video, you can check it out here. And don't forget to think tiny. I'll see you guys in the next one.